In 1941, Henry Luce, founder of Time magazine, proclaimed the American century. For the next 80 years, the United States was the preeminent global power. It became so powerful in those years that it began to think it could become invincible. It believed deeply in the illusion that no one on the planet could stop it. In this video, we'll discuss how America became obsessed with becoming unstoppable.
Let me tell you something. The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth. Period. Period. It's not even close. It's not even close.
What exactly allowed the US to reach for invincibility? It has one special advantage which all other nations simply don't, and that's its gifted location. In the realm of geopolitics, geography already makes America invincible. The two huge oceans give an unparalleled advantage to the US. They keep America insulated from any threats from the old world. If war broke out between China and the US, China would need to travel thousands of miles before they could reach Hawaii. And if they got past the military bases and thousands of US troops, they would still need to traverse a huge empty ocean before reaching the continental United States. The US's strategic location between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans thus plays a key role in keeping it safe from any potential invasion. And the cherry on top is the friendly and extensive trading relationship the US has between its two neighbors, Canada and Mexico. They pose no threat to the US and only help it grow through trade. That's not something America's adversaries could say. Russia and China both have border disputes with their neighbors. This is what unlocked the key to supreme power, the advantageous geography America possesses.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked of the Empire of Japan.
America's geographical advantage was what allowed it to pursue invincibility. But what was the reason for such ambition? Why did the US want to even do this? The reason has to do with America's very relationship with the outside world. The thing is, the US couldn't escape the ambitions of Europe, no matter the distance between them. The fight to keep Europe's great powers out of the Western Hemisphere was a constant battle for the US. The US saw itself getting increasingly involved in the affairs of its neighbors, on the grounds of protecting them from European imperialism. Because if Europe began to take over surrounding areas, this, according to the US, would threaten its security. But it got messy really quickly. This type of foreign policy went from diplomacy to intervention to occupation, and sometimes even outright annexation. All on the grounds of, if we don't do it, the other great powers will, increasing their power at the expense of US security. As the US was fighting to keep Europe out, World War I would drag the US into a war an ocean away. But after World War I, the US retreated back to its own hemisphere, a hemisphere it had now tamed and called its backyard. But because of Pearl Harbor, the US would have to join the bloodiest war in history, the Second World War. It would be the second time the US had to send troops to fight in other people's wars. Wars it had no interest in, but had to get involved because of national security. The US in this new world could no longer enjoy its island of democracy and solitude. It had to be involved in the affairs of not only the Western Hemisphere or Europe, but the entire world. This was increasingly the belief of leading American policymakers as World War II winded down and the Cold War came into focus. A new enemy, yet again, threatened US security. This time, the US said it would not wait for the novel communist threat to expand across the world, but rather be there to contain it whenever and wherever it may be. A problem emerges throughout American history that explains its goal for invincibility, and that is the problem of order. There's just enough enemies out there that are strong enough to threaten US security. European great powers, dictators, communism. It seemed to the US that a hydra would appear every time things were getting back to normal, an enemy ready to disturb the balance of power. But something of great importance happened when World War II ended. The US responded to this hydra by embarking on a quest of power never before seen in history. It increased its global presence by fashioning a new international system designed to stop wars and create lasting peace. NATO was created as a collective security arrangement, the United Nations to maintain peace through international cooperation. The US, in response to bad actors anywhere, was going global. There was no turning back now.
A new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
As a result of this, American power grew to proportions never seen before in world history. But new means of warfare also developed. The Cold War and nuclear weapons called for new covert ways of waging war. The US by covert means would infiltrate countries, overthrow them, and install puppets. What better way to dispose of a would-be world-conquering dictator than to take him out before he becomes too big of a problem? Regime change was the new game, and the US perfected it. In the name of keeping communism out of these countries, the US would involve itself in some type of regime change during the Cold War. Now the US didn't even need to send hundreds of thousands of troops to foreign lands like in the Korean War. It could have a covert operation to topple a nation that 99% of Americans didn't even know about. But even after the Cold War ended in 1991, the US didn't stop. It pushed its NATO boundaries closer to Russia, got heavily entangled in the affairs of the Middle East. It became drunk on power. Who in the world could stop the US? The multipolar world was decades away. This was the unipolar moment, the time when the US was the only superpower. The US was free to expand and dominate the world, and it did. As the saying goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The US was just beginning to get a taste of absolute power, the feeling of being invincible. What had first propelled the US towards this global path was once necessity, was now a perverse desire for invincibility. The establishment in Washington had been consumed by this problem of order. The only answer was more power. But in this process, the US became the very thing it rebelled against 2 centuries ago. It's an empire. We can debate on how long it's been one, but most people I think would agree on the imperial nature of the United States. And even today, in the year 2025, the way to have total control is largely the information space of a country. For when you have it captured, you essentially control what information they can get, thus potentially changing their perception of reality. We can trace a line from the problem of order to the new tools of war today, but the quest for infinite global power has actually made America weaker. It's flown too close to the sun, and this has allowed the birth of a multipolar world. If this dangerous ambition is left unchecked, it could mean the end of the US as we know it. Do you think the American century is over, or will the 21st century remain American? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching.